Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanderwalt, a holistic doula and a women's health coach and the founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. Here we honor the full spectrum of womanhood through story, nourishment, and sacred conversation. Feel free to find us on social media and stay connected with the community. So let's settle in, take a deep breath, and begin. Hello, everyone, and a special welcome to my guest, Stefanie, who is a postpartum doula, an IBCLC, and an herbalist who has spent the better part of 12 years supporting growing families, namely mothers. Her heart has concentrated more and more through the years on the alchemy of grief in life and how that manifests in motherhood, throughout conception, all the way through the parenthood journey. Hello, Stefanie. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what really got you into this line of work.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to be here and having this really just so close to my heart conversation with you today. And thank you for that beautiful introduction also. I actually started my postpartum doula preparation and training when I was pregnant with my son. My sister-in-law at the time had just had her first, and I kind of became her go-to support person. And she asked me, "Have you heard of a doula? Do you know what that is?" And I didn't, so I looked it up, and she was like, "I think you're a natural. I think you should check this out. This could be a really good fit for you." And then I kind of just fell into it, and I loved it. And I feel such reverence. It's such an honor to be in the birth and the newly postpartum space with a family, especially considering how so often we come in as somebody they don't really know, right? It starts with like a business conversation in the contract and all of that, but we're entering such a sacred space. Like we get to be in this moment that most people are not going to get to wander in and out of with them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find that so beautiful. And then my feeding journey with my son was so incredibly difficult and upsetting. And all of these feelings came up that I was not prepared for. So when the opportunity came up to intern as a lactation consultant and train to become an IBCLC, I had to follow it. All I could think was I felt so alone in this struggle, and I could be one more person that makes others feel less alone. Like if I could fill out that gap a little bit more, and contribute to more support and connection and fewer moms feeling like they're just kind of floating through this struggle alone. So yeah.
I love that.
I've just grown from there.
I love that. And it's like you said, it is such an intimate space because I'm also a doula. And like I always tell people, I'm in the beginning, I'm not the type that's like very competition. I'm like, meet other people. If you like someone better, that's better for you in the end because you need to like if you can't take a bowel movement in front of someone having a baby, right? You want someone that you can really connect with a lot. So I completely agree with you there. And I love how you were helping your sister-in-law you had mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
She had her first almost exactly a year before my son was born.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
then
awesome.
My other sister-in-law had another baby, I think a year before hers. We all had a baby like a year apart. It was kind of cute.
I love that. I love that so much. And yay, cousins that are close in age. Perfect.
Yeah.
So you were coming today to talk about the different layers of grief in motherhood. And so I'm used to grief meaning a lot of pain, loss and suffering. So are there other forms of grief as well?
I'm really glad you asked that because I think it's a question a lot of us don't ask. And I mean, I'm a little biased here, but I do feel there is so much grief. Think about the kid that drops their ice cream cone, right? Like for them, it's really upsetting. There's grief. They were excited to enjoy this thing. And I know that sounds like, wow, taking something very simple and small and making it big. But these are little griefs. They're little things that show up in our day that we have to take a second and be like, well, I was really looking forward to that. Or, well, that didn't really go how I thought it was going to go. Like, how much does that show up in motherhood, right?
Yeah.
But there are also things I think that are a little bit more hidden in motherhood specifically because it's complex, it's layered. So much of it is tethered to our experience in our family or with our children. And so we get overlooked, or we just believe, I don't have permission from others, from myself, to feel the sense of loss that I feel. I don't get to feel the sense of loss of my identity, of my freedom, of the dynamics all around me that have changed since I've had this baby, because I'm supposed to be so happy I wanted this baby. My life was going to change, and it was all going to be like rainbows and sunshine, and of course kind of sticky and difficult with the whole not getting enough sleep thing, but it's so much more than that. And yeah, I feel like the most insidious aspect of it is that it is kind of hidden. It is kind of really easy to overlook or dismiss, which we know we see a lot around conception, pregnancy loss, and especially around birth.
Yes. Yeah. And like, I'm not a mother myself, but like, just from the births and the people that I have witnessed, is like you said, we focus on this, oh, it's just going to be a lack of sleep. But I had read somewhere, and I cannot remember where, that when you give birth, it is almost like you leave your body and a whole new aspect comes back when baby is born. And I think that's such a great way to vision it too, because there is so many changes that just completely happen after you give birth, that it's like, it is a very life altering moment. And regardless if it's the first or the third. So I completely agree with you. There are so many layers that people don't talk about.
Oh, I'm really glad that you said that. I have like a really specific way that I like to explain that.
Okay, good. Please go ahead.
The mother self. Yeah. So I feel like our identities, because we all have different identities, right? Like who you are to this or that person in this or that role, all our different hats, whatever. It's like there's this really long corridor with all these different doors. And here is friend Elizabeth, and here's sister Elizabeth, and daughter Elizabeth, and doula Elizabeth, right? All these different versions of you. But our mother Elizabeth is input only up to this point. You don't really know who she is, right? Not just yet. And so you're collecting information, whether it's passive or intentional, of what mother means for you, what that identity means for you, and what that will look like. And then the door flies open when we have our babies, and suddenly we're like, whoa, I didn't know I was capable of X, Y, and Z. I didn't know I could love so much. I didn't know I could sacrifice so much. I didn't know I could surrender so much, or have so much fun with this or that. And then, of course, there's the parts of us that go, I didn't know it meant letting go of this other version of myself so much. Yeah. I didn't know that this part of me that I saw growing up took such hold. I don't like that part. Like, that mother identity has this little part that I'm like, ooh, I always hated it when my mom did that, or when my dad said that. You know, and that's when we deal with it. But up until that point, it's all kind of just shrouded in mystery. We just kind of collect information.
That's a very interesting way to outlook on it. And I've not heard of it put that way, but you are right. We are different in each scenario that we play a little bit in life, just the day-to-day by different interactions even. So that's a very interesting take. I had not thought about. I'm being schooled.
Well, because who you are isn't going to completely go away, right?
Yeah.
But how you prioritize, or how much of yourself, of that self, you let take a priority will change. For instance, like, I could throw myself headlong into my work before I had kids. That was fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because I could, and I was passionate, and I enjoyed it, right? But after I had my kids, it was a priority to work, and it wasn't the top priority anymore. Yeah. And so I had to reevaluate, am I in an environment, for instance, that feels really toxic, and I'm bringing baggage home from work that's affecting my kids? Well, that's got to change. Yeah. Whereas maybe before kids, I would have shrugged my shoulders and just put up with it, or whatever, is one way of looking at it.
I love that I'm always being schooled on this podcast. It's more of just a way for me to learn new things, I guess. But that means that other people, when they're watching, they are learning as well. I love it. I love it so much. So what is, like, awareness? Like, why do we often leave out the awareness when it comes to the loss or grief in that sense?
That's a really good question. I do feel like there is a social expectation, which is deep rooted, has existed for a very long time in the many different iterations of patriarchal society. Women just assume a role. You move from one role into another role, and that takes up most of your time and energy. And whatever comes with it, period. Right? There is no space for acknowledging the fact that didn't have a baby and now you do have a baby, right? And how much that changes your life. And nowadays, feel like that was true hundreds of years ago, but now it's like, well, now you've added on the mother self, you have a baby, and you're still expected to do this, that, and everything else that you were doing before. And there's not a lot of space there to even acknowledge that things have changed that much. And I think that affects it. And then I also think that most of us have been conditioned to brush things under the rug. We've heard way too many times when a mother has a traumatic birth experience, or even one that's not, she wouldn't necessarily call it traumatic, but it's not what she wanted. Yeah. I see this a lot around feeding too. And people will say, in an attempt to be comforting, of course, baby's healthy, you guys are okay, it's all right. You don't have to feel sad for that anymore. It's behind you now. Things like that are kind of dismissive. And we don't really give ourselves permission to think, maybe I need to pause, though. Maybe I'm not ready to let go of this. Like I said, I see it a ton in feeding. I know with my first and with how our feeding journey went, I was grieving that for months. But that was probably because I spent a lot of time, I do spend a lot of time by myself, so I could. And I wasn't working at the time, so I could just be home with my thoughts and spend time with them. And even then, it still took time to realize that I was grieving, that I needed to grieve. And the reason that this topic is so important to me is because I look back and I see the way it held me back.
Yeah.
I see the way that I was overcompensating because I felt that I had failed my son in doing the thing that I was just supposed to naturally do. Yes, natural, not easy. Not, those two words aren't synonymous, right? A lot of people think that they are, but it's not easy. And so I was anxious, trying to make everything else be perfect and make up for the fact that I was a failure. That's how I felt, because I didn't take the time to just grieve for the fact that I had expected something and it didn't play out that way. But nobody else would have pointed that out, right? Nobody else would have said, like, it sounds like you're grieving. It sounds like da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah.
And like you said, we have so much from societal as well as our own, like, holds. Like, we have, like you said, it's a thought before birth. You have a baby, you're like, oh, I'm going to breastfeed it. It's going to go perfect, blah, 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 blah. But there is so many things that are unaware or tossed at us that we just don't fully know. And we have such pressure that internal thought process, that's, so heavy. Like, to have those thoughts that you were mentioning, oh, that I'm like a failure as a mother, what a weight to carry on your shoulder. Mm-hmm. And this may be prideful, so you could totally tell me no. But, like, did you have a lot of extra support from your family and, like, a doula or anything like that in that time period as well? Or was it more you and your partner?
So you mentioned the thing about the thoughts and the stories, and I feel like for me, that story was there already. And I feel like for most of us it is, but they really come to a head when there is, like you said, so much pressure on us to fulfill a certain role, a certain way. And so that's when the stories are, like, really, like, in your face, and I hear them all the time. Processing births and supporting through feeding journeys. Now, for myself, like I said, I'm a pretty solitary person. I'm autistic and I am very sensitive. And so I tend to just like best to be by myself with my thoughts. But in that postpartum period, I think I did need more engagement and support than I got. We were also very low income, and everything in Los Angeles is like, come to this mom group. It's $15, it's $25, whatever, which sounds like not much. But when you're really struggling to make your rent, that is a big ask. And so that was off-putting for me. I did have a little bit of support from a really wonderful postpartum doula who was just doing her certifying hours. And really all she did was come and sit around and talk with me. But that was like fantastic. That's what I needed.
Yeah.
I needed just someone else to be there. I realized that I needed a sounding board, and I needed a witness, because I could come to these conclusions on my own, but I couldn't do it in my head. And my partner at the time, we're no longer together. He doesn't really know how to do that. He doesn't really have a template or an example that he would have learned those skills from. So that was that. And then about 3 months postpartum, I started seeing a really wonderful therapist who I found, I believe, on the Postpartum Support International website. And she's actually still see her now.
Oh,
she's
wow.
fantastic. So I lucked out with that. But I didn't, my family didn't really live close enough by to be around very often. And yeah, so I think that isolation can be really toxic for many moms.
Yeah.
And it's something I talk about with my clients a lot too. Like, even if they just go to a group and they're a fly on the wall, like, the perspective that can be gained by just being around people who are in a similar experience can really help lighten the load that we feel that we're supposed to be carrying. And I think I would have benefited a lot from that, to be frankly honest.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I was just, like I said, I'd be a little nosy sometimes, but it's so wonderful to hear on how many people you're helping where you didn't have that help, to go kind of beyond of what you were given and still kind of give that outreach. So I just, kudos to you, is I guess the sum of that sentence there.
Thank you.
So I guess, where do we see grief that gets dismissed the most?
I think the most common one is birth, just because, at least here in the US, we have such an astoundingly high number of inductions.
Yeah.
And that almost every time is not what anybody wants. Some people have enough time to prepare themselves mentally, and they have really respectful providers. And so they greet it with a little bit more like, okay, I've prepared myself, I can welcome this experience. But the vast majority, it's like, it kind of turns, like, everything seems to be doing fine. And then you get to like 37 and suddenly they're like, oh, we're seeing X, Y, and Z and think you need to be induced. And there's not, it's such a whirlwind for the moms in that position. And so they grieve a lot, but there's just not a lot of support for that, and for the fact that they've attached themselves to a birth experience that would look very different than the way most inductions go. And they also don't know the risk factors associated with inductions, which is probably the most popular medical negligence, frankly, that I come across. Because it's like, they're saying, oh, it's no good to keep the baby in there past 39 weeks, might as well get them out, or they're too big or whatever, as though there is zero risk associated with an induction. And that is like, because the things do come up and the moms do grieve for what they go through. And I think a lot of people don't realize that trauma, at least around birth, but in general, isn't what happens. I believe it was Gabor Mate that said this, and I'm paraphrasing, but the trauma isn't the thing that happens, but the way you experienced it, the way your body experienced what happened. The induction, the birth went completely to plan, but nobody told you what was happening to your body and your baby. And that was scary. That can be traumatizing. It's not near-death experiences. It's moments like that. And then I would say the other one that comes up a lot, that's much sneakier than I think a lot of people expect, is moms going back to work.
Yep.
A lot of grief around that. And it's like, oh, but you had 6 weeks, you had 12 weeks at home with your baby. You should be so glad you got that bonding time. And now you get to go be out of the house. Aren't you happy? And a lot of moms are like, I thought I would be, and I'm not. this is hard. And again, nobody knows, especially nobody in the office most of the time knows how to be with you in that.
Yeah. And such a short period too in the US, because I think here we have between 12 and 18 months, I think. Don't quote me on that fully, but I'm pretty sure they get almost a year, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't quote me, internet, please. I'm gonna get all comments from Canadians, be like, "What?"
Yeah,
No,
well,
but I'm pretty sure it's around there.
If somebody wants to find that out for us and comment it, that would be like,
that's a good.
Let's do that. We'll resource from our listeners here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's really bad. Like, it's woefully bad in the
I can't
US.
even imagine 6 weeks. Like, there's still so little. Like, I work in preschool on my side job, and I see 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and I'm like, they're so little. Why aren't you with your mom? Like, because
another reason when I started going into birth work is because I could just kind of do it when it felt right, or I could do it when my kids' dad got home from work, so they were with one of us and I wasn't gone for long. But it was still hard, and I don't think I took like a big for example, postpartum doula contract where I was away for chunks of several days in a row until my son was like 9 months old.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm not ready. I was ready, but I wasn't ready, if that makes. I think that conflict too, that internal struggle for a lot of moms comes up because they're like ready to go nurture the part of themselves that was enjoying their career and like doing what they did because they chose that path, but also that they want as much or more to not miss moments with their baby, because that's rough.
Too many a braid almost broken apart, 3 strings to like you're being pulled in different directions almost when it comes
that's such a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
the description of it was there, but kind of like broken up. So how can we apply the concept of non-attachment to allow this natural process of grief and alchemy to take place?
Okay, so that's like one of my like things. I developed my process, which is called Motherhood Alchemy.
Okay.
And it's a 4-step process, and non-attachment plays in because and this may be just the way that some minds work. This does work for me. But when we can separate our reality, what would be, what is, whatever, from I'm going to start over actually with that. When we can separate the idealization or like the vision of the thing that we want and what is actually happening, we can unattach those two things from one another. We can become a little bit more objective. And I think that actually, first we have to physically feel the grief. Like, we have to cry, we have to get angry, we have to allow the emotional energy to move. But then when we can say, I wanted this to be my birth story. I wanted the beautiful, peaceful home birth where I welcomed my baby in with fairy lights all around me in the birth tub. And I ended up transferring to the hospital and needing support from these doctors and these medications and these tools to have the birth that I did have. We can appreciate both, I think, a little bit better. And I also think it makes it a little bit easier to process, if that makes sense. Another example is on a feeding journey. And I'm speaking of this one because it's the one I have like so much more experience with. I've processed a lot of births, but I've only attended a couple. Most of my work has been with lactating parents, supporting moms on their feeding, breastfeeding, pumping, whatever journeys. And they're constantly going back and ruminating on, I really wanted my feeding journey to look like so-and-so's, and all of these things happened in this way, and it was so beautiful, and I wanted that. But I ended up with the jaundice and the billy table and the bottles and the pacifier and the formula that upset their tummy and like all of these things. And when we don't take the chance to grieve, to feel the emotions, and then get a little bit more objective and a little more unattached, it's hard to see the good existing with the parts that don't feel so good. I'm not sure. I feel like I may have rambled a little bit with that. But suffice it to say, it allows us the space to recognize the good that does exist in the situation that maybe we didn't desire. And it gives us a little bit of peace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I got it. Because I was gonna start off. Maybe I was like, maybe I should ask what like non-attachment means in that moment. But I think you summed that up pretty carefully. And I mean, for me, I am like I would consider myself a very negative Nancy sometimes, and I'm really trying to change that because you can have set a perfectly fine-ish day, one bad thing, boom, the day gone. Like and so, some people have that too, is that they do see only the negative, and where you're trying to explain more that you got to see the process of the good things that came from it. So there is good from, although it wasn't what we wanted, there was good in going to the hospital because it helped do A to XYZ, right? So I think I understand. Hopefully everyone else listening did understand as well.
Yeah, it's just a different way of going at it. Instead of that, like, yes, but
Yeah.
it's yes, and.
Yeah.
Okay. And that and really freaks some people out because they feel like, oh, I have to abandon what I wanted. I have to abandon all of these feelings and stuff that's going on inside of me because, but, da, 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 da. But the baby's fine and we're home and they're gaining weight and they're growing and healthy. No, it's yes, and, right? Yes, this is what happened, and this is what's happening now. Yes, this is what I wanted, and this is what I got. And we can just look at it a little differently. And like I said, when we can allow the feelings and the energy, the emotional energy to move and kind of release, then we can say, I feel like I'm not explaining it. It's like clearer in my head than I'm saying it. When we haven't grieved and put a little bit of distance between the parts that hurt, we're usually still desperately trying to fix those parts. We're trying to meet the need of the part that hurts. And it's all consuming. It's not necessarily being a negative Nancy, as you put it, or trying to ignore the good things that are happening. It's because we really feel unsettled. We really feel like a deep nervous system response going on because of that birth that happened 6 months ago that we still haven't had a chance to sit with.
Yeah.
But when we can, then we can go, oh, okay, my nervous system is kind of scaled down now. I can see how this isn't what I wanted. And I remember after that crazy induction or crazy whatever birth experience, I remember the first time I made eye contact with my baby. I remember the funny little half smile they had on their face and the way they crinkled their hands up. And we can connect more with those moments and that stuff. And that for me, with my first, that's what I longed for most because I was so preoccupied in my mind and so anxious and so overcompensating that I did miss those things in the moment. I needed to grieve and I needed to regulate myself and stop attaching myself so much to the wounds and the scary parts so that I could get back to the moments that were beautiful, that were there waiting for me to attend to them.
I love that. And the yes and. I think we're gonna have to make that on a shirt or something, like a yes and.
That's what life is, right? We're emotionally complex beings and every day has its like yays and its ahs, you know, like it's all of it. It's the whole spectrum and we're entitled to all of it. We're entitled to experiencing every feeling that we encounter. We don't have to say that one's not welcome, it's uncomfortable. That one's not welcome because my boyfriend or girlfriend really doesn't like when I'm sulking and unhappy. So I'm not going to feel that one. I'm going to ignore that one. Like, no. I'm giving you permission right now to allow all of it. There's actually a study that showed, what's that?
Feel the feelings.
Yeah. So there was a study that showed, and this gives me comfort when I'm feeling overwhelmed by an emotional experience or emotional energy in my body, the physical experience of an emotion in most cases, not all, but in most instances, when we allow it to be, is over in about 90 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So like you feel deep pain and grief and you let yourself cry, and usually after about a minute and a half, if you've really let it run its course, the physical part of it's done. And that doesn't mean that the processing of it is over, but the part that causes us to like clam up because we're trying so hard to not cry, or we're trying so hard to not get mad or whatever, that we store and we pack in and sometimes build quite a, backstock of all of this sadness or anger or discomfort, whatever it is. It's over pretty quick, and it's actually less scary when we surrender. Yeah. And it's really worth doing.
90 seconds is probably a lot faster than holding onto it for a couple weeks, months, maybe years.
Oftentimes years, yeah. And a lot of it's like, I feel like in motherhood is like it compounds.
Yeah.
Because we have all of the dismissed things, and we have the little moments where it was just a really rough day with our kid. And I know for me, it was like, I lost my temper more times than I want to admit. And every one of those moments was like a little moment of grief that I lost instead of connecting with my kid, connecting with myself. I was overwhelmed, and I was this other part of myself that I don't want to put in the forefront. And I need to grieve for those moments, because if I don't, and I don't process them, they stay in my body and they build up and they build up and they build up. And that's where we see things like moms that are in, a functional freeze state, or constantly anxious and on edge, or moms that develop things like mom rage and psychosis even sometimes, because it's all just in there building up and going unattended. All those emotional needs are going unmet.
I know. And there's so many of it. Like you said, it compounds, and that's not a fun state to be in from those that I have witnessed around me that get to that point. So how do people work with you? Like, are you just in LA helping people, or are there all over? Or like, how can people find and follow you and do all the things that they need to be doing?
Sure. So in person, I see people just throughout Los Angeles.
Okay.
Virtually, I could see somebody anywhere, really. And I would be happy to. And I have a website, www.ether-earth.com. And there's a nice contact form that'll pop up and invite you to send your email my way if you want to reach out. That's the easiest way, I would say.
Love it.
And then I also have my Instagram account, which is ether_earth_arts.
I love that.
So I know that sounds really awkward when I say that.
I'll put it in the show notes, everyone, so that it will be easier to find. And I guess this is my surprise question. So I love to put people on the spot, but I would love to know what it means, what being a woman means to you.
Oh my gosh, wow, that is such a big...
I know. I always put people on the spot.
I love it. Being a woman. I feel like it means so many things. I know for me, being born in a female body it's always come fairly naturally to be just like whimsical and feminine in a lot of ways. I feel like so much of it has to do with the way that we know ourselves and the way that we allow a feminine creative energy, like a divinely inspired creative energy, to move through us. I feel like that's the core of femininity. And I definitely want to say it that way because I don't want anyone in any type of body to not feel like they can't feel like a woman if that is their true identity. Yeah. For me personally, I feel like that's something that only we can know really of ourselves. And my goodness, that's a good question. I love it. Wow.
The thing is, it's
But
fun
yeah, I would
if
say
you
the
warn
center.
people in advance, but it's always better on the spot so people, the real reaction.
I lost you for just a second there.
Oh,
Yeah, but I would say the core and the center of it for me is divine creative energy.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's good. I always love asking these random ones at the end because you always hear a different response throughout every person. It's like it's always fun.
Yeah.
It's always something unique and different. So I appreciate you sharing your take on what it means of being a woman to you. And everyone listening, this was amazing. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too.
Oh yeah,
And
no, this has been so lovely. You are so wonderful to speak with, Elizabeth. I
well,
really
well,
enjoyed it.
thank you for sharing your wisdom. You've taught me a lot. This is definitely a new take. Like, because when I had seen it too as a topic, I'm like, we've kind of had a lot on grief on motherhood, and then I kept reading, and I'm like, no, this is actually like a whole different topic still. So I really appreciate you sharing that wisdom, and hopefully it'll enlighten quite a few other people like it did myself. And we'll have to connect further on different ways to make things happen between us.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it's an ongoing conversation. I hope that it's something that more people will talk about because I think that um, we could do with a really fantastic, beautiful up level and re empowerment of mothers and women if we were allowed the space to meet ourselves in our grief and take care of ourselves and then release it because that's how we kind of drop the baggage and we can really run full throttle towards what I call the mother of our soul's call, like who we really, really know deep down that we are and we want to be, and get all this nonsense out of the way, feel all the feelings, feel supported, and allow the alchemy of that process to help us really live out and embody who we really are.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. And I do hope you check all the links out that Stefanie gave us. And join us next week for another episode next Monday. We'll see you. Have a great day.